Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today's element of art we're talking about is space. In order to draw my hand successfully, I'd have to look at the space that's in between and around my hand. When I drew this picture of my hand many years ago, those were some of the things I focused on. You can see the paper. That is obviously the space that I was creating this drawing in. And then I had to look at the amount of space that my hand would take up. That is one part of the element of space. What we want to focus on more today, and what I want you guys to understand the most about space, is how it applies to space in a real life image. Here we have a wedding picture. There's Mr. Adolphson and his wife. This was taken, we've been married for almost 2.5 years now. It'll be 3 years in June of 2017. Anyway, so we have Mr. Adolphson and his wife in the front of the picture. That is called the foreground. Foreground is a term that we're not all quite as familiar with. But if we're thinking front, obviously the front begins with the letter F, and so does foreground. I think that's the biggest thing we're going to have to remember within this lesson on the element of space. This is a real life picture. This picture depicted us in real time on a sunny afternoon in front of this vegetation with a golf course behind us and of course trees in the background. So if we're remembering foreground, I think all of us, or most of us, probably know pretty well what the background is. It's in the back of a picture. And within a landscape like this, we can see that horizontal horizon line that my pencil is traveling on, and that is the back for this back spot of this picture. We have trees out of focus, more trees and vegetation smaller because they're even further away. So if my wife and I are in the foreground, the front, then I would say these plants here to back here are in what's called the middle ground. They're in between us and the background. So boy, if we can figure out that whatever's in the back is called the background and whatever's in the middle is called the middle ground, well then all we have to remember is foreground. And while it still may sound weird, why is it called fore? Well, just try to remember that it's not the back, it's not the middle, so if it's the foreground, it must be the front. So if we can think of drawing a landscape or an image, and I'll give myself a little frame here. Another thing important about space is that in a drawing on a flat piece of paper like this, if we're trying to create the illusion of space, maybe we create this horizon line again. I'm going to think of a pumpkin patch in a farmer's field. I'm going to put a pumpkin in the foreground, up front. Notice it's at the bottom of the paper. I'm going to add these curved lines to show you that the pumpkin's round. But what's most important right now is that this pumpkin is meant to look like it's close to us. It's near the front and it's very large. Now as we move back in space, we may find a pumpkin that steps back a little bit and it becomes a little bit smaller as it gets further away from us. And if we move even back further towards our horizon, we could draw a pumpkin that, while it might be a very nice sized pumpkin, a big pumpkin, since it's moving back in space, it looks smaller. And we still have a horizon here. Let's put some rows of crops. You know, you've probably driven past farmer fields, rows of corn as they are first sprouting. You notice that they've been planted in rows. So now as I have these rows move back, they get closer together and they all kind of vanish towards this point. This is called perspective. So now on a very flat piece of paper, I've tried to create the illusion of depth, front, middle, back, as things get smaller. Oh, I could put a tree line or a forest, a group of trees back here with some tree trunks and branches. And of course, there could be deer and squirrels frolicking within that forest, grabbing nuts and acorns for the upcoming winter, and putting them away and protecting them. Maybe a cloud up in the sky, larger there, skinnier near the horizon. And if there's a farmer who lives on this land, he may have a home for himself, or maybe a barn for any livestock he might have. So within this brief sketch that I've created, I've tried to create the illusion of space. I've tried to make it look like my drawing has an area that's very close to you, areas that gradually step further away, and areas that are very, very far away into the background. Foreground. Oh, I'd say both these pumpkins could be somewhere near the middle ground. And of course, back on this horizon, where we have a group of trees, a home, that would be, of course, the background. There you have it. The element of space within a drawing or a sketch. Foreground, we can walk back to the middle ground, all the way to the background.